Welcome to the Alignment Show, featuring conversations with folks who have taken steps to identify their highest values and align their lives around them. Time on this earth is not unlimited, and you may be seeking to make sure you spend your time on things that matter to you. These conversations will encourage you and support you in doing so. Now, let's meet this week's guest on the Alignment Show. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is in your part of the world. Welcome once again to the Alignment Show. Boy, this has been one of those weeks, folks, but I'm sure it's been one of those weeks for you too. The world seems to be getting more, rapid, whatever it is. But I'm excited by this week's guest. It's like old home week for me. I'll tell you why in just a moment. As we're getting started here, I'd like to remind you about our sponsors. One of our sponsors is Bob Berg and Jeff West and Kim Angeli, whom I don't know Kim, but I know Jeff and Bob. They have an event coming up called SalesWise Live. And I've got a crawl going down there for those of you who are on with us on video. SalesWise Live. You can find it for those of you who are listening at donking.com. That's DONNKING.com/saleswise. You don't have to be in professional sales or perhaps I should say commission sales to benefit from this. We all sell in some fashion. That is, we advocate for ideas. But the main thing about sales, these folks think of it as service. That is, they're finding what people need and providing that. And it's about cultivating relationships. This is something that would be really useful to, authors and teachers and folks like that. It's going to be 2 or 3 days down in Florida where they're going to focus on their way of fostering those relationships. It's really a heart-centered approach. And so I think you would definitely be worthwhile to check it out. There's only a couple of slots left, so do check it out soon. donking.com/saleswise. Also sponsored by, in a very real sense, my books. And so here's another crawl down there, donking.com/books. The latest is Medium Well, which is the latest in the Sparklight Chronicles. Both The Way of the Three-Year-Old Why and Medium Well are business parables. That means that they are good stories that are used to teach principles. And I think that they will be an enhancement to your life. Again, worthwhile checking them out. No obligation whatsoever. So donking.com/books. And speaking of books, I've stumbled across almost somebody from my past. I really can't remember if Nancy and I knew each other very much back in our hometown of Trenton, Tennessee, but we know a lot of the same people. We went to the same high school. We have, to me, a very important connection. That is, her mother was my English teacher. She was one of the first people to encourage me as a writer. And when I found out that Nancy has published at the time one novel, she's just published a second novel. So we need to have a talk. And she was gracious enough to come on with us this week on the Alignment Show. In fact, if I understand it correctly, this is her very first podcast ever. And so let me give you a quick bio here. Where did I put that? It's like running a starship. Yeah. Nancy is a third-generation teacher with a master's degree in education. Her years outside the classroom exposed her to human nature in its many forms. And I'll guarantee you her years in the classroom did too. She says, I write to tell a story that I think I know, then discover it's so much more. And wow, do I agree with that. After a second career in the real world, she stumbled into yoga and found more answers than questions. And so without any further ado, although I really hate that cliche phrase, I can't think of a better one, let's bring on Nancy Hall. Nancy, welcome to the Alignment Show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So there are a lot of firsts for you after what most people would consider a traditional retirement age. First podcast. I got that right, did I?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
the first novel that came after retirement age, although you've been a writer in some fashion all your life, I think,
Yeah,
correct?
I have basically. I was an English teacher, and
Okay.
of course, I
Oh, and you just froze up. We may have, you're back.
I was the daughter of an English teacher also, and so I was a big reader. That was encouraged at home, of course, and reading leads to writing sometimes. So
Hmm.
I had practiced it, but had never really done anything with it.
Did you do much short form writing? I mean, beyond just the English teacher thing, like I don't know, newsletter, blog posts when that was a thing.
I was mainly when I was working full time. I was mainly just at different times. I would sit down and write some things. I did a little poetry, and when I was working on my master's, I took a couple of courses in fiction writing and some things like that also. So that kind of stirred the pot, so we say. And but I didn't. I would have things. I never threw anything away. I would write a little something and file it somewhere else and stumble across it years later. But I really most of my concentration when I was working was on my work.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And of course, you were having to do a lot of writing for work. Um, did you have that sense that there's a novel inside of me that's going to come out at some point?
Not until about 2014.
Mm.
Uh, I would have people tell me, "Oh, you ought to write a book." I'm sure you've heard the same
Oh
thing.
yeah, yeah.
Um, People know when you have a flair for writing. I would write some articles for the local paper. I was in, we have a community theater here, Nightlight Theater, and I would review the plays for them. And someone would say to me, "Oh, you ought to write a book. You ought to write a novel. Or when are you going to write a novel?" And and that was kind of in the back of my head, but I never really sat down and really tried to push for it until, like you said, "Hey, Nan, time is running out."
And so, and every once in a while you freeze up, Nancy. So that's the technology. It's okay. We go on with it.
Okay,
But I'm trying to think what the last thing was we heard. 2014, I think.
okay. Do I need to move or anything?
No, no, no. It's probably cell signal, folks. As you can tell, she's on her cell phone. It's giving a really good quality, but every once in a while it'll just freeze up, and that's okay. That's
Okay,
just what we're dealing with
that's fine.
here. So let me see. I had lost my thought in thinking about the tech here. Nightlight theater. I remember hearing that. Oh, I know what I was going back to. Let's turn that coin over just a little bit. There's a lot of us that have a way with words that people say you ought to write a book. In 2002, there was a survey done, I think just mostly among Americans. This was not an international survey, but 81% of those folks said that they wanted to write a book. However, only 15% of them ever started a book. Only 6% got halfway through, only 3% finished the book, and only 0.6% published it.
Really?
Now, you are part of that 0.6%. And so, here on the Alignment Show, we always like to kind of probe. A lot of folks think about making changes in their life.
Mhm.
You've actually done it. And so what I want to explore a little bit is not just what led you to write. I think we have a good feeling for that, but what led you to actually write, to actually research what was involved in publishing these days, to bring it to fruition. And not only that, I'm setting up a complicated question here, Nancy. You have a second book out. We're going to talk about both of those books in just a little bit, but I often wonder why this sounds sexist, but I don't intend for it to. I often wonder why women have more than one child. I mean, after that first experience of birth and the literal labor and the pain of it, what is it that makes a woman turn around and say, I want to do that again? And
Mm.
there's something similar with a book. It's a lot of work, a lot more work than most people realize. So, what is it now that has led you to continue writing? Because you've got a third book that you're working on.
Yes, yes.
What do you think?
Well, as I said before, when you're working full time, and you're trying to, it's you have to work and you have to get the money, you have to pay the bills. Uh, that's really where all your concentration is. And it's hard to, I know lots of writers work full time, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and write before, write when they got home. But I never did that. Once I retired, and I had traveled some, met some different people. And then then my yoga practice, which started back when in my 40s actually, I was able to teach at the Y and to begin making my practice a little bit more um, for other people.
Mhm.
And so the yoga is exactly what you're talking about with alignment. Um, that's all about getting things figured out. It's about balance, balancing your life. It's
Mhm.
about um, finding the courage to do things that you think you can't do. And so in 2014, I went on a writing/yoga retreat in St. Paul,
Interesting.
Minnesota. Went by myself. I didn't know anybody else. And Janine Ouellette was the head of it, and she has been teaching writing for a long time. And it was actually about creativity and stirring, getting things going, thinking of things in a different way, and meeting other writers also helped me to see, I'm not the only one out there. And I had a close friend who died. She was another fellow writer, and she talked to me a lot about, well, if you're going to do this, you got to do it. So,
Mhm.
so,
Mhm.
so I started in 2014, but it was 5 more years before it actually came out. So, but other people can really stir you, and then you have to have something inside of yourself too, to have the motivation to go on, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got people that are joining us here on YouTube, by the way. It may be me that's freezing up because was it Ames said it's coming through YouTube with no glitches, so you may not have frozen up, Nancy. So
Well, good.
very good, but you've got good support there. People have been so important to my own journey. I had published 3 books prior, but that was like 15 years ago was the last one. So you and I have in common. This is not technically a novel. The novels that I've written, but they're the elements of fiction. So we're both doing this past traditional retirement age, and I want to bring that out for people listening. If you think that it's too late for you to follow your dream, uh, you know, Nancy is living proof right here.
I
Uh,
am.
yeah,
I,
yeah. But then there's also that awareness that we don't know how many years we have left. I've got stories to tell. You've got stories to tell. We got to get those told.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
what advice would you give? And this is not primarily a writer show, as we talked about yesterday. People who are looking at what's important to them and considering how to bring their lives into alignment. You've
Mhm.
already done that with yoga. You have done that and are doing that with writing. What advice would you give somebody who's thinking, well, there's all this that I really wanted to do. It's important to me, but that ship has sailed. Any advice for someone thinking that?
Well, you have to convince yourself, first of all. You have to, you can't rely on other people telling you that you should do something, or uh, complimenting something that you've done, that you should try more. You really have to convince yourself. And that comes from your past experiences. It comes from the lives that you've lived before. If you can look at your life as things that you've overcome and realize that, then that will give you incentive to try other things, to try new things. And I can't stand to fail. That's one of my attributes is I want to succeed in whatever I do. Um, just like this podcast, I could have said, "Oh no, I'm too old to do this," and let's do something else, And I got a little apprehensive about it, but once it's out there, I've got to do it. And
Mhm.
so I think you need to to really grind down to the basics in your own life and decide what's important and then act on it. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just do it.
Mhm. See if this resonates with you in working with public speaking clients and students. I will tell them it's not fear, it's energy. That is the thing they're labeling as stage fright. It's energy. It just means you
Yeah.
care.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. So that fits your experience with that.
Mhm.
Um, let's talk about the books themselves a little bit. There's I'm about, I'd say, probably 2/3 of the way through Tilted. And let's go ahead and I've got it on screen here. Let's see here, share screen. And there it is on Amazon.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And we'll show the newest one here in just a moment. But this was the first one that came out. You said it took about 5 years for you to publish it in 2019.
Right.
And one of the things, of course, I'm having fun with is as I read it, I'm recognizing places, I'm recognizing people. I think, if I remember correctly, because we're wrapping up a semester here, so I've been a little tied up the last couple of weeks.
I understand.
But yeah, I know you do. But I'm thinking it's set in at the 1950s, early 1960s.
Early 60s.
Okay, yeah. And so that's really kind of ahead of our time a bit. But I'm recognizing some of the folks that were around, in our little hometown.
Exactly.
Um, what led you to set it in that time period instead of a little bit later, maybe the 70s or the 80s?
Well, the 60s was really was my time, and the 60s full of so many things that I think a lot of people who didn't even live at that time relate to and have heard about.
Mhm.
And I'm so Southern. When people ask you, "Well, what's your book about?" My Southern accent gets even heavier.
Oh yeah, me too. Yeah, yeah.
And I'll say, "Well, it's set in a small town in West Tennessee." And they grin, they smile a little bit then and lean in to what I'm telling them about. Uh, but that the main character actually did come to me. I've read about that, um, but it actually happened. I was sitting on the patio, um, and we have a little farmland behind our house. And I was trying to get who the main character was going to be because whoever the main character was going to be was the one who was going to get in all the trouble and
Mhm.
have problems to solve. We know Kurt Vonnegut says that.
Yes.
But so all of a sudden she came. It was, of course, it was going to be a woman. She came walking across the plowed field, and I could actually see her and visualize her. And
Wow.
that's what started then the story. And I put her in trouble and got her out again, and put her in trouble and got her out again. But your references to the people, I wrote. Uh, I wrote about our town, of course, but I didn't realize how the people in town would react to it. And I've been amazed. I've been absolutely amazed. People will say, "I know who this character is," and it's not even close. Or they'll say, "Oh, the best question is when they say, 'Am I in your book?'"
Okay.
First time they said that to me, I was fortunate enough to come up with this answer, and I use it all the time. When they ask me, "Am I in your book?" I say, "You are if you want to be."
That's excellent.
Is
Yeah.
that not a good answer?
Very
So
good. Yeah.
yeah, and of course with the second one, then I brought in even more characters, and a lot of my characters are combinations of
Oh, sure.
people.
Sure.
You know
I mean,
that.
you used real names for at least a couple.
I did. Yeah,
And little side trip here. I believe you were active, maybe still are, with the Fred Culp Museum there in.
yes, yes,
So Fred Culp was a much beloved history teacher. In a lot of ways, he's responsible for my career because when I was in eighth grade, he was the sponsor for the school yearbook, and he needed
yes.
a photographer. He stuck his head out the door of his room there on the second floor of the high school, and I happened to be the only kid in the hallway. And he said, "Do you know how to use a camera?" I said, "No, sir, I don't." He said, "Well, you can learn. Come here."
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and
I
that's
work
what got me started. It was photography to begin with, and then because of that, connected me to our newspaper there. It led to the writing. So
exactly.
Fred Culp, a much beloved person there in town, and now the museum named after him.
Yes, I worked with him for about 4 years.
Mm.
I would go up every Thursday, and we went through his papers, and it was absolutely amazing, inspiring, and fun, just fun. His sense of humor was just
Oh yeah,
something.
yeah,
uh,
very very dry, and
yes, yes.
so now I'm really bad with time, Nancy. I know that he was 99 years old, I believe, maybe past 100 when he died. How long has that been?
No, he died in 2017.
2017. Okay, so he knew he was in your book. It was
Uh,
before it was published, but you were working on it at that point.
he didn't know that he was in my book. No,
Okay,
he
okay,
did not. No.
yeah, I was just curious about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Lawyer Malone, of course.
exactly.
Yeah, I recognize the swimming pool where a major incident happens.
Mhm.
The name of the town is different, but the physical locations and the characters, a lot of them, as you say, they're combinations. But on the other hand, I would bet you can go into most any town in the mid South, at least. And for folks who, we have folks listen to this show all over the world. Mid South would include the area of West Tennessee, Northern Mississippi, Eastern Arkansas, a little bit of Kentucky, maybe even the heel of Missouri, the Boot heel. You could go into almost any town in that area and see similarities, see similar characters.
Exactly.
Um, I'm I'm going to ask a curiosity question here. There is a lady who becomes sort of a mentor to your main character in Tilted. Is she based on a real person? Was there somebody in town I didn't know about?
Uh, that is probably the most frequently asked question I and
Oh,
she is a combination of 3 women. I took attributes from 3 different women,
mhm.
to make Edna Love, uh, and I know that's who you're talking about,
Yes,
right?
yes. I couldn't remember her name, but yes, Edna Love. Well, what a
Love.
great name that is.
I know, I know, and she plays an even, major part in the second novel too, because I would have, um, and I can say this because I'm a little old lady, but I would have a group of little old ladies talking about Tilted and about the characters, and I would say, "Well, who's your favorite character? Who would you, you know?" And they would say, "Well, we like the main character, Meshach, but we want to be Edna Love." I just thought that was precious, and they wanted to know more about what was going to happen to her, so that
Oh yeah.
led to the second book too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and when you have people interested like that, you've touched a heartstring there.
Yeah.
Such a strong character, especially considering early '60s in the Mid South. So
Mhm.
yeah, that is just fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, let me go ahead. I'm going to pull up the second book here because we've shown the first one. Burn Bright came out just it was at the end of March, the end of April.
No. It was in December of 23.
Okay, okay, I'm behind here, so I was thinking it had just come out. Okay, so share screen, and here it is. Alrighty, Burn Bright, and so this is the sequel, A Tale of Moonlight, Murders, Money, and Mystery. Excuse me, I have described it to some friends that I was talking to about it as Southern Gothic. I don't know if that's an accurate description or not. Do you think?
It's close, yes. It's
Okay.
like I said, I don't intend to kill everyone off, but a murder is always interesting, is it not?
Oh yeah.
Is it not?
Yeah, yeah, and those little southern towns. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on behind the scenes there.
Exactly, exactly. Um, my publisher is Jackie Hillman. She was a journalist with the Jackson Sun
Hmm.
in Jackson and has her own publishing company. And then another, the cover, I think, of Burn Bright. I love the cover, and that's Wanda Stanfield did that for me.
Oh,
Sh- She's from Jackson also, but the cover uh, gives a little, two or three little hints of some things that are going to happen with the moonflowers, and then that hidden tiger there. So
yeah. Let me get that back up here again. So when your cover can give clues like that, that
yeah.
helps draw people in.
Another thing was the moon is the opening lines that you read. The moon is plays a dominant part in the novel, and but it was very difficult to come up with the title because there are so many books with that in the title: moon, moonlight, moon
Hmm.
shadow, and we really it took us a long time to come up with the title. But once you read the book, you'll see exactly where it comes from.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm really looking forward to it here. I've got to finish Tilted, and I was right at a point. I know what a narrative arc looks like, and I can tell, okay, something major's about to change for
Yeah,
Meshack.
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and you may remember who this was, Nancy. I can't remember who to give proper credit to. Somebody said that the way you write a book is you take a character, you get them up a tree, and you throw rocks at them.
Right, right.
Yeah, and so Meshack's going to have trouble here.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
there are every genre has tropes, like the business parable genre that I'm writing in. One of the tropes is the wise mentor. Okay, were you consciously thinking about those tropes as you were writing, or just letting the story come?
The story come. I just let
Okay.
the story come, and then that's one of the benefits. One of the amazements I have found is I look back and think, well, that's actually is standing for the heroine. That's actually standing for, the character who you think is good and turns bad. Uh, you don't realize that that's the beauty of writing. You don't realize the depth that may be there, but it happens. And it happens more, the more you write, the more it happens too.
Mhm.
Uh, it's part of that. What we're talking about is the alignment, is figuring out, you know, what's good, what's bad to leave behind, and just keep going. You just got to keep going.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love what you were saying about I write to tell a story that I think I know, then discover it's so much more. When you described in such great terms your character walking across the field to you. Uh, do you find yourself as you write that the characters just kind of take over, and it's almost like you're taking dictation?
Yes.
Mm,
And I
mm,
never thought that that was true. I had read that, I think Faulkner says somewhere, I just take my notebook and listen and write everything down. I never really believed that because I
mm,
knew how hard it was to come up with things and to come up with the right word and the right sentence and the right circumstance. But especially the more I write, the more it happens.
Mm,
And Peter Taylor is our Pulitzer Prize winner from Trenton.
mhm,
And again, Mr. Cupp, when I was working with him, brought a whole lot more things to my knowledge about Peter Taylor. But there's a book called Conversations with Peter Taylor, interviews with him. And I pick it up from time to time and read it just because it's him and he lived.
mhm.
But he says that writing is actually a religious experience.
I can see that. Yeah.
And that when you write and the more you write, the more you learn about yourself and about things that matter, the things that really matter in this world. So,
Mm, mm.
and I believe that.
And the theme of this show is to live your values so you can value your life. So again,
Exactly.
we're not primarily a writer's show, but this is getting at the heart of what all of us are trying to do.
Exactly.
Um, Curious, when did your mother pass on?
1989.
Okay, so it was nowhere close to her seeing you become a novelist. Um, she was so influential on me, on you, on so many people. Uh, what were your thoughts about? I'm sure there was some of that mama would be proud.
Oh, yes. And I've been amazed at, just like you, former students of mothers who have said, oh, your mother would be so proud of you. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
I've heard that a lot. Uh, and but I was not even there at all, when she was still here. She knew that I could write,
Mhm,
and that how important reading had been to me because of her. I think I may have said somewhere that one of my earliest memories is her reading to me, laying across the bed in the back bedroom. I must have just been maybe 3 or 4 years old. And she would rather, like me, she would rather read than clean house. Uh, so, I've gotten that from her too.
oh, yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that she influenced you as a teacher, uh,
Yes.
just that the love for your students and all of that sort of thing. I wanna probe a little bit, maybe this is in the context of talking about your mother, maybe not, but there was somewhere yeah, here it is. My college professor, taught me how to not write good girl prose.
Yes.
And, small town and all that sort of thing. I wanna probe that just a little bit,
That
because
that
there were some things in the book that I'm looking at and I'm thinking, "Okay, I wonder if Nancy got any pushback on that."
the teacher that I was talking about was Dr. Stephen Mooney, and he was at UTM from 60. I was there from 67 to 70.
And UTM is University of Tennessee Martin.
Right. And Dr. Mooney was editor of the Tennessee Poetry Journal, that was published then. And I met, he kind of took me under his wing. He used to call me his daughter, and paid a lot of special attention to me, which I loved, but which really spurred me to do and follow what he was teaching. And he said to me, of course, my husband, Jimmy, was in school too, and all of the English classes that he took, I wrote all of his themes for him. And so he had Dr. Mooney in a freshman class, and he was complimenting Jimmy, not knowing that it was me. but he would teach. Dr. Mooney would teach. You may have a perfect sentence. You may have it balanced. You may have the punctuation correct. But if it's not going anywhere, if it's just filling in, that's good girl prose. Don't
Mhm.
don't write good girl prose. Say what needs to be said,
Yeah.
and move on. Uh, don't be afraid. Um, my editor is great at getting my tone and understanding where I'm headed because she's a Southern woman too. But sometimes if she says, well, what about a sentence? What about change this word? She usually connects with what I'm trying to say and do. And I try to not let that hold me back. I try to say what needs to be said.
I
Sense?
think it was Stephen King who said, "Write with the door closed, edit with the door open."
Yes, yes, yeah,
So once you have finished the writing, you have to start thinking about the market and the readership at that point.
exactly.
Okay. Okay. You're in the process of writing the third book now, or have you completed it and it's in editing phase?
Oh, no, no, no. I wish, but no, no, no. Actually, I'm writing snippets of things. In my first book, the first book, is based on the seasons of a year, equinoxes and solstice, and that was the train. That was what carried my story. So I would finish with the spring equinox, and then I would think, okay, so now we're having the summer solstice. What's going to happen then? And that was what carried the story. The second book, I didn't have those 4 seasons. I had the moon, but it was harder to get that progression going. Um, but what I do, what I've always done is I'll just sometimes it just hits me. I sit down and write about a character or story or an incident. Now I have in mind which character is going to be focused on for the third novel. But I'm writing little stories that come up, little incidents. Um, some of it I may use and some of it I may not. I don't know where it's all going to mesh together, but it's all out there, and I can really feel that I'm pressured to move faster on this one, but I feel like I can move faster now. I feel like I've learned a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Same town, which again we emphasize the town is fictional. It's got a fictional name
Right,
based on some familiar areas.
exactly. We
Okay.
always say that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. We'll probe it for the audience here. When you're writing a series, in a way, you remove some of the tension. If you know that the same characters are in, let's say, the third novel, then you know they didn't die in the first novel. You know,
Exactly.
so how do you maintain the tension through the series, resolving each book, and yet it goes on? Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it's very, very difficult to do. But yet I'm amazed at how many people want series. The
Hmm.
readers want series, which is a compliment to you as a writer,
Hmm.
because they liked what you wrote. They liked the characters. They want to know what happens next to them,
Hmm.
and that gives you an incentive as a writer and you as a reader to, oh, I hope she comes out with another book. I hope he has another book. Um, and so it's it's difficult, but I have to let my muse guide me on that, really. And I think we may have talked about this. With the second book, I knew I had to talk about some of the things that happened in the first book, but I also wanted people to be able to pick up the second book and start reading and be interested in it without reading the first. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it's a fine line that you have to walk there between them. It really is.
Indeed, indeed. Each book is sort of self-contained, and yet it also fits within the series.
Yes, that's a way. That's what I'm working for.
Okay. I have had this experience. I wrote The Way of the Three-Year-Old Why thinking it would just be a one-off.
Exactly.
And then what was supposed to be the second book is now the third one came to me. And then what's medium well, it's up here on this corner, medium well popped up and insisted on being written first.
Really? That's so
And, and so I've had to move a few things around to make the timeline fit. And now a fourth one has occurred to me, and it's chomping the bit. I'm telling it, you're just going to have to wait. You know, I'm wondering if you're experiencing that same thing. You're working on the third one. The story has not yet resolved. You're still discovering that.
Yes.
Is there already a fourth one that is nibbling out there? You have a sense that there's more universe here to explore.
Yes. And I think that what happens is that uh, I mean I had to leave out some really good stuff I thought.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, that's not going to work, and so I'm going to have to put that aside. And I'm subconsciously I'm looking at, am I going to be able to bring that character or that situation back in to
yeah.
this next novel or the next one? So that has a good bit to do with it. Also, I actually, like you, I was going to just write the first book, and that was going to be it. Uh, and I even told some of the book clubs. I said, well, near the end of the first book, I was going to kill off the main character. I had her I had her tied to a tree, and it was going to happen because I had told her story. I feel
Mm.
like I had told her story, and I wasn't planning on writing another one. But then it was going to, because everything was in her voice, it was just going to be too complicated. So I let
Mm.
her,
Let
so
her live.
let her live. Up. And so now I'm glad I did.
As just to probe the feeling a little bit, do you think it's the case that you let her live or that she insisted on living?
Oh, I think she insisted.
That's such an interesting dynamic, how all that comes together.
It really is.
Oh my goodness. Well, I want to be sure that, and we've got. Oh, this is one of my friends here that's saying good morning. So we've got an audience joining us. Lisa, I'm glad you're getting to know Nancy here. Um, we've showed the books. I want to make sure that we see your website here. So let's do that. Share screen. You would think I had not done this before. I'm forgetting where the buttons are. There we are. And I'm on your bio here. So let's scroll up a bit. Okay. So
Yeah.
Nancy F. Hall author.com. That's all one word. And you can find the bio there. You can, let's see, we've got a link up here at the top for shop. So
Yeah.
that's where you can get the books. Folks, we will have these links in the show notes. Okay. And we'll also share links to Amazon, those of you who are in that ecosystem. And if you're doing like me with this, Nancy, as you add books, they're going to show up there on your website. So, I mean, that's something really
Yeah.
to link and just follow Nancy.
Yeah.
As we come to a close here, I always like to wind up by saying I'm always a generalist talking to somebody who, in some fashion, is a specialist. And there's probably something that you wish that I had asked that I didn't ask. What would that be? And what would your answer be? Not to put you on the spot, but just to say, what else should we have talked about that we didn't?
Ah, I don't know. I'm pretty satisfied with
Very good, very good.
with my first podcast.
I was going to say, first one, you have done an excellent job. You,
Thank-
you you would never know that you'd not been on here before, and hope that there will be something that will be useful to you in the future.
yes, yes, I sure do.
Um, Here is one little follow-up question that occurs to me. When I left the little town that we share in 1974,
Okay.
and I've been back for visits, but not much. And since mom and dad passed on, I really haven't been back in years.
Yeah.
It had a population of about 5,000 at that time. I looked up just recently, it still has a population of about 5,000. In fact, it's down to about 4,500.
Hmm.
a lot of our friends and family left. I was one of those people. A lot of our friends and family stayed right there. What are your thoughts? I mean, in a way, on a per capita basis, there are an amazing number of writers that have come out of Trenton, Tennessee. You know, we just have the Teapot Festival, which you were active in there. What is it that keeps folks, yourself included, in the hometown when our culture has become so mobile? You could easily have thought, if I want to be a writer, I got to move to New York or at least Atlanta.
Right.
Complicated question, but do you have some thoughts around the value of staying put?
Yes, obviously, I love I love the small town atmosphere. I love the thought that I can go somewhere and probably know someone there I've had experiences with. I taught them or their children, or I remember when their dad owned the grocery store. Um, that connection is not just with people, but it's actually with the town. With when I drive down College Street, and there's a little turn there, and you see the courthouse. It fills up uh, the entire view there, and I didn't know him, but I know who built it. R.Z. Taylor, who was Peter Taylor's grandfather, built it, and I know a lot of stories about that. And I tried to touch on that a little bit more in the second book, but things like um, you go to the grocery store and someone 2 aisles over calls out your name. They know you, and they probably knew my mother and my daddy and my brothers. Now, to some people, they say, well, small town is too nosy. They know too much. And that's true. Uh, but also, you can find communities like that in large cities.
True.
Both of my sons have moved off and live in big cities, and there's still a feeling of neighbors and neighborhoods and communities there.
Mm.
So a lot of it depends, on the kind of person that you are, I think. When my oldest son went to Chicago, his friends up there would say, "Have you talked to your mama today?" And he'd say, "Well, yeah, yeah, I did. Why?" "You're talking Southern again." That
Oh,
with
yeah.
your accent has floated back up to the top. So, so yeah, there's a connection. There's a connection in a small town that's just even you haven't been here in all these years,
Mhm.
but isn't there a little bit of longing for you to maybe ride around the square one more time?
Oh, yeah, yeah. See where the Dairy Queen used to be and the fairgrounds and all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Those times when we've been over there, I think my wife gets tired of me saying, and so and so used to live over here,
I know it. I know it.
and we have Lisa Williams who is commenting here. She loves the small town atmosphere. Also, she says she lives in Dexter, Maine, and so that's not exactly southern, but there's that. She commented here, gossip for sure, but we have big hearts. So I think that small town thing is just a big part of American culture all over.
It is,
Although there's certainly peculiarities to our Southern culture.
of course. Of
But just real quick, I want for those of you who are on video, I'm going to share as usual a couple of QR codes here. This is a QR code that would take you to Nancy's website, so you can take your phone, use the photo app on that, and be able to get right there. We've named it out loud a couple of times, and in the show notes, we will have that too. For those of you who are on audio only, you can get to the show notes by going to confidencecultivators.com. I always emphasize that S because it's plural. Confidencecultivators.com. you'll be able to find the show notes, and all the links will be in there. But you can also connect with Nancy's author page on Facebook. We've got a QR code for that. But I found that it's a little hard to find it by searching for Nancy Hall, but I love the name that you have for your page there. So let me pull that up. Let's see, ticker. Where did I put that? Here it is. Okay, putting it on the screen here for folks who can see it. We'll say it out loud. Her author page is Stories in My Head. And so you can go to facebook.com/storiesinmyhead and find her Facebook page. Isn't that a great name?
Yeah.
Oh my. So we were kind of joking. It's kind of a running gag here on the Alignment Show. This is supposed to be a half-hour program. And I think we've done one episode that ran 30 minutes or under. We just get into such a great conversation. So Nancy, thank you for being here. I'm honored to have you on as your first podcast. Hope it was a good experience.
It was
And
great.
if you'll hang out in the green room for just a moment so that I can properly thank people, then we'll be right back with you. So again, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see you in just a second. And so, folks, as we wrap up this edition of the Alignment Show, I've said many times that the main reason that I do a podcast is because I get to talk to people that I wouldn't otherwise get to talk with. Now, I could go back home and have conversations with folks, but I love the synchronicity that I happened to see Nancy commenting on something on Facebook, and then happened to see some mention that she had written a book, and you know, all of these things coming together. You just never know when you plant seeds what seeds are going to come up. I think it was Robert Schuller who said that anybody can count the seeds in an apple, but only God can count the apples in a seed. And so keep planting your seeds. You never know what's going to come up. Next week, we have a guest who has been planting a lot of seeds of his own. His name is Tim Brand. He is active in missions and also in changing people's lives. There's a lot to know about Tim, and we're going to be having that conversation next week. So I hope that you will keep us on your browser, keep track of that link. As always, confidencecultivators.com not only will get you the show notes, but they will also tell you about upcoming guests. So be sure to stay in touch. And as we wrap up this week, as always, we're seeking to help you to live your values and value your life. We'll see you next week here on The Alignment Show. That's it for this week's episode of The Alignment Show. What has it inspired you to do in your own life? Whatever it is, take action now and take the first step. It will help you to talk with a friend about what you're thinking. Share confidencecultivators.com to spread the goodness. And remember to live your values and value your life. We will see you next week on The Alignment Show.